good morning, Flatirons. Hey, we taught you guys a song last week. It's called Prodigals. We would love if you would stand and worship with us this morning. You know I had my doubts. I thought the fire went out, but the old winds are blowing, blowing again. You know I lost my way, and I'm sure I will again someday. There's a whisper calling, calling again. This is the sound of a child coming home. Hallelujah. This is the song of a welcome prodigal. Hallelujah. I thought I was too far gone, but you always leave the light on. Praise God, praise God, praise God. I'm coming home. Hey! Thought I was miles away. Somehow my vision changed. You've been with me all along. Took me a long, long time to finally realize that you never, ever, ever shut the door. This is the sound of a child coming home. Hallelujah. This is the song of a welcome prodigal. Hallelujah. I thought I was too far gone, but you always leave the light on. Praise God, praise God, praise God. For those who are afraid to come, there is no fear in perfect love. For those who don't know where to start, He always meets us where we are. For those with just a little faith is all it takes. He's calling, He's calling. If you got caught up in religion's game, then let Him show you the real thing. For the skeptics still in search of truth, He'll bring that child out of you. Oh, what are you still waiting for? He's standing at an open door. He's calling, He's calling. This is the sound of a child coming home. Hallelujah. This is the song of a welcome prodigal. Hallelujah. This is the sound of a child coming home. Hallelujah. This is the song of a welcome prodigal. Hallelujah. I thought I was too far gone, but you always leave the light on. Praise God, praise God, praise God, yeah. Praise God, praise God, praise God. I'm coming home. Hey!
Come on, we sing this out together. Come all you weary, come all you thirsty, come to the well that never runs dry. Drink of the water, come and thirst no more. Come on, our God invites us into His presence this morning. Come all you sinners, come find His mercy, come to the table, He will satisfy. Taste of His goodness. Come lay them down at the foot of the cross. Jesus is waiting there with open arms. Yes, you will. Yes, you will. It's what you do, God. Won't He do it? He made a way. You made a way out of deserts and rivers. You made a way out of bondage and darkness. You made a way out of deserts and rivers. You made a way out of bondage and darkness. Come on, church, let's sing that. You're making a way out of deserts and rivers. You're making a way out of bondage and darkness. You're making a way out of deserts and rivers. You're making a way. You're making a way. If I know one thing, our God is a deliverer. If I know one thing, our God is gonna see us through. If I know one thing, our God is a deliverer. If I know one thing, our God is gonna see us. He'll see us through. So God, we believe that this morning we step into that truth, that you're a deliverer, that you're our hope, that we can put all of our hope into you, that if we know one thing, that you're a deliverer and that you're gonna see us through, God. So we step into that with confidence this morning. We believe it and we know it to be true. And so we thank you for your presence here today. We thank you for showing up today as we showed up. We love you. We're so thankful for you. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, amen. Hey, church, why don't you turn and greet somebody? Welcome them to church this morning, and then you can have your seat. If you're joining us online, we love you guys. We're so glad you're here. You're just as much a part of this service as everyone here in the room, so participate with us. We love that you're here.
Good morning, Flatirons. How you guys doing? That's okay. I know you guys are still waking up. Hey, if we have not met, my name is Michael. I am the middle school director here at the Lafayette campus. Yeah, I guess I work with middle school. Cool. And if you could not tell from the video in the first song, we went to camp and made it back. We have made it back from middle school camp. You see out in the lobby today, maybe some adults wearing these shirts. I would encourage you, go up to them, give them a high five, give them a hug, let them cry in your arms because they just spent a week with middle schoolers. But we had a great time, and I wanted to just take this moment, first of all, just to thank you as the church. As we make this push for this next generation, it's been so helpful to have a church that supports us and backs us and is praying for us and is giving their time, effort, and money. And because of that faithfulness, we were able to take 360 middle schoolers to camp last week. Crazy. It's crazy. And I've been crying like a baby all week. I didn't think middle schoolers would make me cry this much, but it gets crazier than that. We had an opportunity for those 360 middle schoolers to take a next step in their journey with Jesus. And out of that 360, we had 206 say yes to Jesus. That is an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. And we also had about 28 people who are students who are interested now in getting baptized and taking that next step and saying, hey, I don't want my faith just to be my own, but I want to make it public. That's a really cool thing as well. So thank you. I'm trying not to get choked up here, especially watching that video and seeing these students just commit their lives to Jesus. And my phone's been blowing up with texts and calls about stories of how Jesus has impacted the lives of these middle schoolers. And one story comes to mind that I had from a parent that texted me pretty much saying, hey, I don't know what happened this week, but God's definitely changed the heart of my son. And he is actually not just leading himself in his faith. He's leading me and my wife and my family. He's encouraging me. He's saying, hey, don't worry, Dad, God has got this. And that is an incredible thing, is it not, church? Yeah. So all that to say, thank you for praying for us. We made it back safe. It was a great time. Hey, I got a couple things I just want to get in front of you before we move on with today's service. The first one is this. We're taking a missions trip to Masana and Uganda. And this trip is actually a great way for us to not just have a local impact, but have a global impact as well. And this trip we're actually doing is medical focus. So if you have a medical background and you're interested in maybe going to Masana with us, please find out more information, get signed up. The dates are October 12th to the 21st, but the last day to sign up is June 26th. You do not want to miss this. So find out some more information at flatironschurch.com/outreach. We are going into week 4 of our series, If You Know, You Know. And Ben brought a great message last week, and he's going to bring another great one today on what it looks like for us to maintain hope. And how many of you guys can agree that maintaining hope in this world and its midst of suffering and pain is a very hard thing? I think a lot of us in this room, if we were asked, hey, how are you doing? We would automatically answer with, we're all right. But if we're being honest with ourselves, we're not being very honest. And that's the next song this worship team has prepared for us. So take a look up here.
Every time I walk out of the house, put on another face just to blend in with the crowd so nobody sees you. You would never believe me. I tell you that I'm whole, but I'm still healing. I tell you that I'm happy, but I'm grieving. If there's a fight, I'm still in the fire. But if I'm being honest, I'm not being honest. I'll give you roses to stop me. Don't see the weeds in my garden. If I'm being honest, I'm in my darkest. I'm sitting here waiting and praying for someone to show me what love is. I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest. Every time I pass the hardest part, just comes another ghost just to pull me to the dark. I thought it was over. God, let this be over. 'Cause if I'm being honest, I'm not being honest. I'll give you roses, just don't be, don't see the weeds in my garden. Oh, if I'm being honest, I'm in the darkest. I'm sitting here waiting and praying for someone to show me what love is. Oh, I'm just being honest. I'm just being honest. Yeah. I tell you that I'm whole, but I'm still healing. I tell you that I'm happy, but I'm grieving. That I was a fighter, but I'm still in the fire. Don't say it, don't say it, no, no. I feel so low in my darkest. Just being honest.
All right, so our worship band is just awesome. They can go from playing worship songs to doing that. And then the woman singing that, her name's Donnell. She's our friend from Minnesota, which I don't know why anyone would live in Minnesota, but she does. But every now and then she just comes to hang out with us and sing with us. So just give it up one more time for Donnell and the band. All right, hey, before we get started, some of you might know this, some of you don't, but last weekend I was teaching here and my daughter Chloe got really sick. She had a virus. Doctors still don't know like exactly what virus or what happened, but she had a virus that dehydrated her so like badly and rapidly that by Sunday morning she had become delirious and eventually unresponsive, which is terrifying as a parent. And I got that phone call from Allie in between teaching the 9 and preparing to teach the 11 o'clock service. To catch you up to speed, urgent care sent Chloe by ambulance to the Children's Hospital in Anschutz. They pumped her full of fluids and they monitored her vitals for about 24 hours. And then on Monday afternoon, we were able to take her home. And now she's back to being sweet, beautiful, ornery, hilarious, healthy Chloe. So it's good news. I'm sorry, but your kids aren't cuter than that. I know you think they are, but they're not. Before we get started, a couple thank yous. I want to thank, first of all, like we have amazing worship and production staff and volunteers here. In between services, when I told them I had to leave, they didn't skip a beat. They took the video of me teaching at the 9 o'clock and they played it at the 11 o'clock. I never felt like I had inconvenienced or annoyed them, and that's because we have amazing staff and volunteers here. Give it up for them. And then I also want to thank you for all the prayers and encouragement, and thank you for the countless texts and emails I got about like just letting me know that you're praying for my family or asking how you could help. I won't be able to reply to all of them because there were so many, but thank you. And thank you for, if you happened to attend the 11 last week, thanks for like being troopers and watching me on video, like I guess all of our campuses have to do all the time, but I just want to thank you from me and my family. Thank you, all right? This weekend, to kind of make up for the fact that some of us had to watch me teach on video last weekend, what I'm actually gonna do this weekend is I'm gonna re-teach my sermon from last weekend. I'm kidding. I got almost all you. I work harder than that. Hey, so this week we're in week 4 of the series called If You Know, You Know. We've been studying through 1st and 2nd Timothy. These are 2 letters in the New Testament, both of them written from Paul to his younger friend and protege, Timothy. And both of these letters are meant to equip and encourage and challenge the next generation. And so if you've been here, you know throughout the series, we're talking to both the Timothys and the Pauls, all right? We're talking to the Timothys, meaning anyone who's 30 or younger, the next generation. And we're trying to figure out what can we learn about leadership and purpose and influence and following Jesus from the words of Paul to Timothy. And then for the Pauls in the room, that's anyone 30 or older, we're trying to figure out what is our responsibility to equip and encourage and challenge the next generation. And today, even though this talk is really applicable to anyone of all ages, today, honestly, I'm mostly talking to the Timothys in the room. All right, this is the next generation. And because today is all about not losing hope. And here's the reason that this idea of not losing hope is so relevant to the next generation. It's because according to mental health experts, millennials and Gen Z are the most stressed out, depressed, and anxious generation in all of history. Or at least in all of history since we started recording stuff like that. We also know that this is especially true of Generation Z. That's anyone born between 1997 and 2012. All right, according to a recent study done by McKinsey and Company, Gen Z reports to have the least positive outlook on life, including lower levels of emotional and social well-being. During a 12-month span from late 2019 to late 2020, Gen Z was 2 to 3 times more likely than any other generation to report thinking about, planning, or attempting suicide. In addition to this, Gen Z is also twice as likely to not seek any help for mental suffering. And if you're a part of Gen Z, none of this surprises you. Right? It's like, well, yeah, that's just my life. So it's like people ask me how I'm doing without thinking about it. I'm like, I'm good, man. How are you doing? But just like the song that we just listened to, if we're being honest, we're not being honest. We're not doing well. We just don't know what to do about it. This decline in mental health has become so drastic that on December 7th, 2021, the US Surgeon General declared it an official youth mental health crisis. And some mental health experts are starting to relabel Generation Z. Instead of calling them Gen Z, they are beginning to call this generation, brace yourselves, the hopeless generation. And that breaks my heart. I used to get to lead student ministry here, middle school and high school, and I got the gift of getting to be involved in launching our young adult ministry, and I just still have a tender part in my heart for anyone in my generation and younger, and this breaks my heart. And when they say the hopeless generation, they don't mean like you have, like there's no hope for you, like you're not gonna amount to anything. Instead, they mean hopeless as in this generation has lost hope. You don't know what to look forward to. And it's such a big problem, and no one really knows what to do about it. And so our world and our culture and some mental health experts have begun like grasping at straws for potential solutions to the youth mental health crisis. Like, how can we make life better for this suffering generation? And that's a noble cause. That's something we should all be thinking through. But at the same time, like I talked about last weekend, the world is lying to you. And I see some of these lies in our culture's idea for how to be happy and hopeful and mentally healthy. For example, just out of total curiosity, while I was studying for this talk, I got on Google and I searched how to be happy. I just wanted to see what popped up. All right, here are the top 3 results. The third most popular result was a website that offers advice on like diet, sleep rhythms, breathing techniques, exercise regimens, and tips for how to like schedule your day. So basically how to manage your health and schedule in order to achieve happiness and hope. Second most popular result was a foundation for mental clarity and meditation run by a Buddhist teacher. And the most popular result on my Google search was this yoga class offered by a self-proclaimed mystic and visionary yogi. And this dude's name, and this is the best part because you can't make stuff like this up. This guy's name is Sadhguru. Genuinely, his name is Sadhguru. Come learn to be happy from Sadhguru. My whole first page of Google results was all stuff like that. All these ideas for how to be happy and hopeful. But the idea behind all of those solutions, the idea from our culture is that happiness is the goal of your life. And you can achieve it by just changing a few habits, diets, and exercise routines. Or in other words, to go a layer deeper, because I think that this is where the real problem is. Our culture says that if you're not happy, and life isn't easy and comfortable, well, then something must be wrong with you. Because culture says that the point of life is to be happy. And so if you're not happy, then I'm sorry, but you must suck at life. And I believe that is one of the greatest lies from our world to especially our younger generations. It's the lie that hardship and suffering are avoidable. It's the lie that there's like this utopian life out there with the right diet and the right exercise. There's this perfect life out there that's completely free of any and all suffering. And in fact, I can't help but wonder if one of the reasons Gen Z is so hopeless is in part because the world keeps telling you the lie that life is supposed to be this easy, comfortable, happy adventure all of the time. And that's a really high bar to hit. And so when you have a season of life that is not easy or comfortable or happy or adventurous, you start to think to yourself, well, I guess I'm not living my best life, or I must be doing something wrong, or worse, maybe something is wrong with me. But the truth is that life is not always easy, comfortable, and happy. Sure, there are days and seasons where that's the case, and be thankful for those days and seasons, but it's not the norm. And in fact, most of the time, life is kind of boring and mundane and routine. Right? You wake up Monday morning, you get out of bed, you pack your backpack, you go to school or work or whatever. Later you come home and you eat dinner and you go to bed and you do the same thing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It's just kind of routine. And then on top of that, sometimes life is filled with unavoidable hardship and suffering, but that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It's just because life is hard. And because life is hard, that means life takes endurance. And this idea that life takes endurance, you find it all throughout First and Second Timothy. You especially see it in Second Timothy. All right, if you've been here, to remind you of our context for 2 Timothy, remember our context. Paul is writing while chained to a wall in a prison cell in Rome, and he's about to be executed. So Paul is writing this letter from a situation that is anything but happy and easy and comfortable. And then Paul's writing to Timothy, and Timothy is leading a church in Ephesus, and Timothy's like banging his head against a brick wall, trying to lead this group of people who, like we talked about last weekend, do nothing but fight and argue and bicker with each other. And if they're not doing that, they're looking down on Timothy for being too young. He's too young of a leader. That's the context of 2 Timothy. Paul is suffering and Timothy is suffering. But from that place, Paul writes this. This is 2 Timothy chapter 2. We're going to start walking through it together. From a place of suffering, Paul says to Timothy, endure hardship with us like a good soldier of Jesus Christ. Paul looks at Timothy, a member of the next generation who's going to carry on like the torch of Christianity long after Paul is beheaded. He tells the next generation the same thing I believe we should be telling the next generation in 2022. He says, hey, Timothy, the goal isn't necessarily to avoid hardship. Sometimes that's impossible because real life is really hard. Instead, Timothy, the goal is to endure hardship like Jesus did. And then Paul goes on to give us 3 metaphors for what this endurance looks like. He gives us the metaphor of a soldier and an athlete and a farmer. And we're gonna walk through all 3 of these metaphors together one by one right now. All right, first metaphor, very next verse, Paul says this. He goes, no one serving as a soldier gets involved in civilian affairs. Instead, he only wants to please his commanding officer. If you know anything about the military, you know that a soldier's responsibility is to carry out the orders of his commanding officer, and nothing is allowed to get in the way of that. They're not allowed to be like, yeah, I'll do that tomorrow. I'm just kind of sleepy today. They're not allowed to do that, right? And the order from the commanding officer came from his commanding officer, who came from their commanding officer, all the way up until you get to the commander in chief. And Paul is saying that God is kind of like our commander in chief. You gotta trust what he's telling you to do, follow his orders, and seek to please him above anyone else, no matter what. Next verse, new metaphor. Paul says this, he goes, similarly, if anyone competes as an athlete, he does not receive the victor's crown unless he competes according to the rules. And any of us who have played sports, we know that's true. If you're an athlete, there's always rules to the game that you're playing, and you can't win if you break those rules. You're disqualified if you cheat. Unless, of course, you're the Houston Astros or the New England Patriots, and that's a different sermon. You get it though. Paul says that there are rules and boundaries to the game of life, and we've got to play by Jesus's rules. All right, that was our homework last weekend. Some of these rules are to be honest and forgiving and diligent and thoughtful, kind and empathetic. All right, next verse, last metaphor. Paul says the hardworking farmer should be the first to receive a share of crops. Farmers work hard. The Foot family comes from a line of farmers, and these were men and women who they know hard work. Their hands look different from working with them. They walk different because of like the back-breaking labor, but they work hard for a reason. They worked hard because they're looking to reap a harvest. They're expecting a reward at the end of all their hard work. So to summarize what Paul just told Timothy, Paul told Timothy this. He goes, hey, Timothy, like a soldier, aim to please God in everything you do. Like an athlete, follow God's rules for a fulfilling life. And like a farmer, wake up every single day and put the work in. And all of these metaphors go against the lie from our culture that life is supposed to be easy, comfortable, fun, and happy all the time. Because remember, Paul is using these 3 metaphors to drive home the point he made in the first verse we read, back when he told Timothy to endure hardship. Soldier, athlete, farmer, these are 3 examples of people and professions that require endurance, but their endurance is aimed at hope. In other words, here's what I mean by that. Why else would a soldier endure living in a foxhole, wet, cold, hungry, and tired? Well, it's because they hope to win the war? Why does an athlete undergo and endure the grueling training to try to become the very best they can be at their sport? It's because they hope to win the championship. And why do farmers endure the same backbreaking labor every single day of their lives? It's because they hope to reap a harvest. In other words, Paul is not telling Timothy to endure hardship or suffering just for the heck of it. Instead, Paul is telling Timothy, like a soldier, athlete, or farmer, to endure hardship with hope. Paul's saying there's a goal. There is a reward at the end of all this suffering and hardship. In other words, Paul is saying when you let Jesus into your suffering, your pain is no longer pointless. Instead, your pain has a point. If becoming more like Jesus is the goal of your life, which for Christians, that's supposed to be the goal of our lives, well then pain has a point now. It begins molding you to become more like Jesus, who saved the world by suffering for it. And so we can endure hardship with hope. This is why Paul can encourage Timothy at the very beginning of this letter to Timothy when he says this. Paul says, God did not give us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love, and of self-discipline. So don't be ashamed to testify about our Lord or ashamed of me, his prisoner. Instead, join me in suffering for the gospel by the power of God. Paul says when life gets hard, which it always will, because real life is really hard, Paul says when suffering hits our lives, we don't have to face that suffering in timidity or fear, meaning we don't have to face our suffering with our heads hung down and our shoulders hunched, just wondering like, am I doing something wrong or is something wrong with me? No, instead, if you lean on Jesus for strength, we can face hardship in the spirit of power and love and self-discipline. We can endure hardship with hope. And this theme throughout all of 1st and 2nd Timothy, this idea of enduring hardship with hope, it reminds me of something Jesus said. All right, it's this thing he said that I remind myself of and repeat to myself and think about on a near daily basis because it gives me hope, which is different than makes me happy. It gives me hope. It's in John chapter 16. It's something Jesus says to wrap up a long conversation he had with his disciples. And the conversation with his disciples that he had is he's destroying the lie that you will hear in a lot of churches. Jesus is destroying the lie that if you just follow Jesus and tithe the right amount of money and say the right kind of prayers and volunteer in kids ministry every single week and stop cussing and drinking and all that stuff, then your life will finally be easy, comfortable, happy, and fun. No. Jesus says that's not how it works. In John chapter 6, Jesus says that real life is just really hard. And so he tells his followers that they're gonna have to endure hardship and suffering just as much as someone who doesn't follow Jesus. But then at the end of this conversation, Jesus tells us the one difference between a person who suffers and follows Jesus and a person who suffers and does not follow Jesus. And the difference is where they place their hope. He said this, he says, I've told you these things so that in me you may have peace. So Jesus goes, hey, when life gets hard, you're actually not gonna find peace in yoga or meditation or diet, exercise, sleep, or a super expensive daily planner. You're not gonna find peace in that. You're gonna find peace in me. And then he says this, and this is the verse I think about all of the time. He says, in this world, you will have trouble, but you can take heart because I have overcome the world. He says, in this world, you're gonna have trouble. You're gonna have trouble, it's just gonna happen. But when it gets hard, you can take heart. And another way of saying that take heart thing is don't lose hope. Jesus says that with him and only with him, you can face suffering with your shoulders back and your head held high, and you can stand tall and endure hardship with hope. Why? Because in the kingdom of Jesus, no suffering, no pain is pointless. The world is telling us that it has to be possible. Like surely there's a way to avoid suffering and hardship, but Jesus is telling us the hard truth, even though it's hard. Jesus is telling us the truth that on this side of eternity, hardship is unavoidable because real life is really hard. And life is hard for people who don't follow Jesus, and it's also hard for people who do follow Jesus. But Jesus said that the difference is people who follow him can take heart. You don't have to lose hope because you are following a God who somehow saved the whole world through suffering. And he's saying that without Jesus, your pain will continue to be pointless. But with Jesus, pain has a point, so don't lose hope. And even though that sentence on the screen doesn't make us feel warm and fuzzy and happy inside, at the same time, there's something deep down, if you're honest, inside your guts that you know that's true. You know there has to be a point to pain. This is why some of the most amazing people throughout history and the most incredible people that you'll bump into on a day-to-day basis are not the people who have had easy, comfortable lives since day one. In times of hardship, no one is looking to Jake Paul or Mr. Beast or any other YouTuber out there for hope. Instead, the people who most amaze us are people who have suffered and endured hardship, and they've done it beautifully. These are the kinds of people we're naturally drawn toward. And when you see these people, you can see Jesus's idea of enduring hardship with hope, this idea of suffering beautifully. You can see it in the lives and the words of some of the most amazing people to have ever lived. Martin Luther King Jr., right, the most recognizable leader of the civil rights movement, a pastor, one of the most influential men to have ever lived. He said this. He said, the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. And we still talk about this man today because of his hope and how he endured hardship with hope, even to the point where that hardship killed him. Desmond Tutu, this is the Bishop of Johannesburg. He fought tirelessly to stitch back together South Africa after it had been ripped apart from apartheid. This is a man who knew suffering like you and I will hopefully never have to know suffering. And he said this, he said, suffering is part and parcel of the human condition. You can't avoid it. But then suffering can either embitter or ennoble us. And it can ennoble us and become a spirituality of transformation. It can change your life only when we find meaning in it. In other words, your pain has a point. I just finished rereading one of my favorite books on how to find hope in the midst of suffering. And in fact, it's just one of my favorite books, period. Right? The book is called Man's Search for Meaning. It's by Viktor E. Frankl. Every human being should read this book, but especially if you're going through a hard time. If you're going through a hard time, do yourself a favor, order this book on Amazon when you get home and read it. It's a pretty quick read. But what the book is it's Viktor Frankl's autobiographical account of surviving multiple concentration camps during the Holocaust. And the main argument of Frankl's book is that in life, you can either choose to face hardship with despair or you can choose to face it with hope. And his argument is that the men and women who face hardship with hope are the most likely to survive. And here's one of his quotes from the book. It kind of summarizes his theme. It's one of my favorite quotes. Frankl says this. He goes, "We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting others and giving away their last piece of bread. And these men may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man except for one thing. It is the last of human freedoms, the thing that can never be taken from you, which is the right to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way." Frankl says that you can lose everything, and he did, by the way. You can lose your job and your home and your friends and family and freedom and health, you name it. You can lose everything in life except for one thing. There's one thing that it's impossible for you to lose, and that is the right to choose hope in the midst of suffering. When you listen to people of influence, people who actually changed the world, people who have learned the art of suffering beautifully, you can hear the stamp of Jesus on all their words. You can hear Jesus saying to us through them, in this world you're gonna have trouble, but take heart, don't lose hope, because I have overcome the world. Through their words and experiences, you can hear them saying, with Jesus, pain has a point. So don't lose hope. Now, all of this hits close to home for me. All right, and that is because this idea of enduring hardship or suffering beautifully, it's an idea that means a lot to me. I think some of you know this part of my story, maybe a lot of us do, but I remember first wondering if I had depression back in college. I felt deeply sad all of the time. All right, and this is even when on the surface level, on the outside looking in, my life was great. I didn't think it would get any better than that. Like, I was finally away from home. I was 1,000 miles away from home. I loved college. I loved all the new friends I was making. I met Allie, and I was quickly falling in love with her. I would eventually marry her. But it was like, even in the midst of all these great things, there was this heavy, dark burden on my shoulders all of the time. Those of you who have depression, you know what I'm talking about. And just like a lot of our Gen Zers in the room, I didn't seek any help. I was trying to figure it out on my own. People would ask how I'm doing. I'd say I'm doing great, but if I'm being honest, I wasn't being honest. Fast forward a little bit, I married Allie. We moved to Colorado. I started following Jesus for real for the first time. Allie and I had our first kid. On the outside looking in, my life just keeps getting better, but still this heaviness never left me, and still I never told anyone about it. And so over time, it just got darker and it got heavier, and it started to envelop me and it started to consume me. This is why for the Gen Zers in the room, when we talk about how mental health experts are beginning to call you the hopeless generation, and when we start to talk about the increase in anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation, I don't just hear statistics. I don't think of you as a statistic or a problem to solve, because I have experienced this with you. I know what it's like to feel hopeless. I know what it's like for some of those mornings to feel like it is a superhuman task just to get out of bed this morning. I know that's not laziness. I know it's deeper and heavier than that. I know what it's like to take inventory of my life and realize that God gave me really good friends and a really great family and a great job or a great school or whatever. He gave me a good life, but I still feel sad and anxious all the time. I know what that feels like. And I know genuinely what it feels like to have those dark, incredibly scary thoughts run through your head when you're all alone after an especially hard day, and you start wondering and you start convincing yourself that everybody you loved would just be better without you. It's a lie. Couldn't be further from the truth, but I know what it feels like. I've been there. I've lived through that. Things started to change for me as soon as I could finally be honest. I went to a retreat down in Texas. It was the original version of the liminal retreats that you might hear about that we still run today. And through that retreat, I jumped into a small group of men my age who were really honest about their own suffering and hardship. And so I finally had a place where I could be honest about my own hardship. And I started to discover that people would still love me, and they wouldn't leave me, and they wouldn't treat me differently, even though I was really broken and hurting and honestly very messed up at the time. And I finally had that. And through that, I was finally able to begin inviting Jesus into my suffering and into my depression. And that's when things started to change for me. I began to trust Jesus when he said, in this world, Ben, you're gonna have trouble, but you can take heart, don't lose hope, because I've overcome the world. I didn't just trust him, I was clinging to Jesus for survival. Now, fast forward from that about a decade to today, and here's the $1 million question. Did my suffering disappear? Did my depression disappear? Listen to me. No. Here's the follow-up question. Do I still feel hopeless? Again, listen to me. No. And that's because I'm learning that suffering is a part of the story of Jesus. And so it's gonna be a part of my story too. And I'm learning that, just like Paul said in 2 Corinthians, that whenever Jesus chooses not to take away our suffering, he also tells us, my grace is sufficient for you, and my power is actually made perfect in your weakness. And I'm learning that in this strange, backwards, but beautiful way, because most things in the kingdom of Jesus are strange and backwards and beautiful. I'm learning that Jesus is somehow taking my suffering and using it as a gift in my life and in the lives of other people. He's using it as a gift in my life. Like, he uses my depression to make me more compassionate and empathetic and patient with other people who are suffering. He uses it to force me to depend on him every single day of my life. And he's teaching me to face my suffering with my shoulders back and my head held high, standing tall, and not in a spirit of timidity, but in a spirit of power and love and self-discipline, believing in the promise that with Jesus, my pain has a point, and so I don't have to lose hope. And then he's also using my suffering as a gift to other people. And there's lots of ways he does that. But one of the ways is that I'm able to stand on this stage right now and speak to the next generation and tell you, I know your pain. I don't just know it up here, I know it in here, genuinely. I know your pain, but I've also found hope in the midst of that pain. So take heart and don't lose hope. And I wish I could tell you that with Jesus, there's a way to make it stop. Like, I would love to find that trick in the Bible to take away your suffering, but it's not true. And I promise God I would always, to the best of my ability, tell the truth when I'm standing on the stage. And so for the next generation, especially our Gen Zers, here's the truth. The truth is that the world is telling you that with the right diet and exercise, or with enough money, or with the right amount of followers online, you can finally achieve a happy, easy, comfortable, fun life. But it's not true. It's a lie, and it's a destructive lie, because it's a lie that convinces you that something's wrong with you every time you don't feel like life is easy, comfortable, or fun. But it's not true. Instead, the truth is what Jesus said, which is, in this world, you will have trouble. You just will. Because real life is really hard. And without Jesus, your pain will continue to be pointless. But with Jesus, your pain has a point. So don't lose hope. Jesus can, in a way that will blow your mind, use your pain to help you grow and mature, and he'll use it to take care of other people who are hurting around you. That is the truth we see in the lives of the men I quoted earlier: Martin Luther King Jr., Viktor Frankl, Desmond Tutu. That's the truth we see in the lives of Paul and in Timothy. It's the truth I'm learning in my life. And most importantly, it is the truth you see displayed in the life of Jesus. It's the truth that pain is never pointless in the kingdom of Jesus. It's the truth that Jesus brings healing to the world somehow through suffering. And so please, I'm begging you, take heart. Don't lose hope. Before we get out of here, let me give a few ideas for how we can take heart in the midst of suffering. First idea is this: you need to be in community with people your age who are trying to endure hardship with hope. You need to. You have to jump into our student ministries or our college or young adult communities. Like, one of the defining characteristics of our generations is that we don't seek help. It's that if we're being honest, we're not being honest. We're not doing well. We just don't know what to do about it. That's the defining characteristic of our generations. Listen to me, you have to break that trend. You have to live in a totally different way. You gotta be in community with people your age who are trying to endure hardship with hope, people you can be honest with. That's when things started to change for me. Another idea is this: you should always be in community, but sometimes you're gonna need even more than that. And so seek professional help through counseling and or medication if needed. There's no shame in that. It doesn't make you weak. I'm on both. You switch them up constantly, right? There's no shame in that. Doesn't make you weak. Talk to your parents about that, or if you're older, talk to your friends and mentors about that, and consider whether or not you should do that. And don't let money be an issue. Because of the generosity of this church, which cares about the next generation, You go to our homepage, flatironschurch.com, right there on the homepage, you'll see Next Generation Counseling Reimbursement. You can get more information about that. We can help you pay for that. Right? Here's the last idea. It's simple, but I do this just about every single day of my life. Memorize John 16:33. It's easy to memorize, right? In this world, you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. I can't tell you the number of times I start my day by reciting those words from Jesus in my head. And on good days, I watch it take life. I'm like, look at me, I'm taking heart. And I believe that he's overcome the world. And I believe that he's overcome my suffering. And then on bad days, I am clinging to those words of Jesus to get out of bed and to make it through the day to get back to bed. But I don't know where I would be if I didn't have that hope from Jesus running through my head all of the time. And so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna ask that you stand with me right now. Some of us, this is our story. We know what it's like to take heart. And we've seen Jesus work through our suffering. And so it's a good reminder of that. And then for others of us, we don't see how this is possible. We don't see how it's possible to find hope in the midst of our suffering. But right now, what we're gonna do as a church, as a family, is if you feel comfortable, we're gonna recite this verse. And we're gonna personalize it so that it sticks in our head, right? And so you're gonna repeat after me. And we're all gonna say this, whether you believe it or whether you don't believe it right now, we're gonna say it like we believe it because we're trying to place our hope in Jesus. So repeat after me. In this world, I will have trouble, but I can take heart. Jesus has overcome this world. One more time like you mean it. In this world, I will have trouble, but I can take heart. You finish it. Listen to me, especially our Gen Zers. Some people are calling you the hopeless generation. And that's because they're looking at suffering through the lens of our world, which says that suffering is pointless. But I look at suffering through the lens of Jesus Christ, and suffering is how Jesus chose to heal and redeem the entire world. And so other people call you the hopeless generation, and when they do that, I see nothing but potential. I see nothing but hope. Why? Well, it's because only a generation that truly suffers can truly turn to a lost and confused and broken world and say in honesty and with conviction and say from experience, say to the world, take heart. I have found a way to suffer hardship with hope, so follow me and don't lose hope and take heart. And what if Jesus wants to use your generation to teach the rest of us what it looks like to endure hardship with hope? And what if Jesus wants to choose your generation to show the world that he wasn't lying when he said his grace is sufficient for you and his power is made perfect through your weakness? And what if Jesus wants to take your suffering and in his strange, backwards, but beautiful way, use it to bless your life and then bless the lives of people around you? He's done that in my life, and so I know it's absolutely possible that he can do it in your life too. So take heart and do not lose hope. God, this is a message that there's basically two people in the room right now. There's some of us who we've learned how to take heart, and this message is such a reminder of the fact that you've walked to every single mountaintop with us, and then you held our hand and you walked into every valley. And so there's some of us who just feel thankful to you right now because we've learned that these words from you are true. And then there's the other type of person, we don't see how this could be true. And we're looking at our suffering and there's no way I could find hope in the midst of my suffering, but it's true. So God, would you please do that thing that only you can do, where you settle in a person's heart. Just give them a brief glimpse of your peace and of your mercy and of your patience. Give them a brief glimpse of how much you suffered just so that you could be with us. God, would you do that? Because there's no words and there's no song that can make that happen. God, would you settle in the hearts of hurting people in this room? God, the song that we're about to sing is all about how at the end of the day, you are our living hope. And today we're gonna sing that like we mean it, because at the end of the day, we're placing our feet on that firm foundation. You said we can trust it. It's not gonna crumble underneath us. And everything else feels like it's crumbling around us right now. And so we're gonna sing like we mean it, that you and only you are our living hope. We've put all of our faith, hope, and trust in you. So God, we're begging you to keep your promise that in your kingdom, our pain has a point and we don't have to lose hope. So God, that's what we're resting in right now. That's what we're about to sing together as a church family. And ultimately, we're thankful for, and we love, and we worship our living hope, Jesus Christ. And it's in his name that I pray. Amen.
How great the chasm that lay between us. How high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Come on, every voice we sing. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken. I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Come on, we sing it together. And hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your very body began Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your very body began to breathe, and out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Jesus, yours is the victory. Yeah. Hallelujah. Well, hey, church, go in confidence this week, knowing Jesus is our hope. He's walking with us. We love you. We're so glad you're here with us today. We hope you have a great week. If you need prayer for anything at all, we have a great prayer team up here that would love to pray with you. Other than that, we'll see you next week.